Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Biggening Corporation. We are today on episode 17, and after a day off, that wasn't quite all I wanted it to be, we are jumping back into developing our game using Business Central as the engine. Where we left off in our last episode, we had our very first experience of one of our bots doing what it was supposed to do finally, and that we had it creating purchase orders for us. And that is one of the many ways that players will interact with the engine to generate wealth. So we're going to build on that today because I think that's a fine place to start. We had created the very beginning steps with lots of hard-coded options into one purchasing bot that was going to create purchase orders for us, and that's all it was going to do. And there's a lot there that still needs to be done. So I want to dive into that more today. We'll see how far we get with that. There probably is enough there just with the purchasing bots that we could probably spend the rest of this week on it. But we'll play with some different things on that today. Now, where we had last left off, if we go to our friendly little bot list here, we can see that we had left off our Test Player 5 company with one purchasing bot, and it was only doing 2 operations per day. It has been a little less than 48 hours since we last looked at our company, and let's go take a look at what's going on in the purchase order side, because after all, we didn't hook up any code to post purchase orders, we just generated them. And as you can see, we definitely have some results. Boy, do we. So in the time span since we last were playing around with this purchasing bot, less than 48 hours ago, just about 48 hours ago, at 2 operations per day, this bot has already created about 400 transactions. As you can imagine, I mean, that's a lot in a way, because in a very short order, we're going to potentially be having easily 10-20 bots ticking along, and then we're talking a few thousand orders in a couple of days, and then that's per player. So even just 10-20 players, now we're talking about tens of thousands of test transactions generated at a modest tempo of every 15 minutes. So we're already beginning to see the power of what we're going to be able to do to generate data at a pretty high rate of speed. Now, all of these are pretty generic and minor at the moment. We hard-coded them all directly against one particular vendor, and hard-coded them all against one item and one location, and the quantity is pretty much one of the only variables. It's a little bit random, and we also put the price in at a little bit random. So we have a huge amount of orders, and I'll try batch posting a small handful of them. Before I do that, just going to double check the document date is correct, and so is the posting date. So as we were to go through these, we potentially see the different game dates that are being generated by the system. So this would give us a nice example flow over quite a period of time of inventory. I didn't want to post these off camera. I'm not sure how long this will take. So we will kick this off and then go into code. We're not going to sit and watch all these purchase orders post because that would be crazy. I'm going to tell it to go ahead and post all 400. Enjoy. I'll be curious to see if we run into any errors in the background while that flows along. So, well, okay, that's actually going quite a bit faster than I expected it to. So anyways, so where we're going to be going today is we need to, first of all, make it possible that the players can assign some of these values on the bot. So we, for example, had the infrastructure on this bot instance to link it to a particular assignment. So we need to add to our UI the ability to set that for this purchasing bot. Not a big deal. That should be pretty easy. But we also wanted to have some restrictions around players being able to only set certain values on some of the core tables, like vendor. For example, on vendor, it would make sense that they need to set a location code, but only allow them to change that location code. So, okay, no problem. We will need to do that today. And we were also talking about that vendors are going to have a set amount of items that they will work with, and orders per day, quantity per order, and that'll be a little bit interesting to set up. That's going to require a new little subsidiary table to drive what items will be bought at what sort of volume. So we're going to need to create a new subsidiary table for that. We'll need to show some of that info to the user in a way that makes sense. I'm thinking probably a list part fact box will do the job for that just fine. I don't think we need to go more detailed than that for the most part. And that I think we'll have a good time trying to get that all in today. We'll see if we need to go past that. So that's roughly the plan. And while we were talking about the plan for the day, neato. All of those were posted. We had no errors with any of our documents. Well, that's cool. Okay, so now if we go off to our item list, we also have something nifty to work with in that now when we look at this item and we look at the amount, we're going to have quite the option. You know, one of the things I'm noticing is that when I logged in, I'm in 9:15:20. There we go. Okay, so that updated to correctly the game date. The game date is in 2024, I had noticed. So we've got 6,000 of this item on hand, and the cool thing is because of the bots using the posting dates, we can see that that is something that has grown over time. So yeah, that'll be cool. For demo data purposes, this will eventually be a really nice way to see a flow of data over time. I could see there someday being a separate little extension that people might want to add onto the system that controls whether or not a bot ticks on a certain date, so you can simulate weekdays versus weekends. So anyways, cool. Alright, let's get to some of the making changes. Let's see if we can go a little quicker here. Okay, so we've got the list here. I've still got this list entirely editable. The ribbon's still kind of a junky mess. So we're going to need to fix that up at some point in our not too distant future. But we can write to this list for now, add the assignment code. So we're going to keep it simple for now because we just need this to work. So real easy. After the bot name, let's add our assignment code. Cool. As we saw from Code Cop, we're eventually going to need to come on back in here and throw some tooltips on all these. Oh, interesting. We had the assignment code on here, but it, for whatever reason, was set to visible false. Peculiar. Okay. Well, I'm going to remove that version of it and move it up before the power per day and leave that on there. Okay. Operations update code. I don't even remember what that field was. Oh, it shouldn't be update. That should be upgrade. Brilliant. I wonder how long that typo's been in. Alright, hooray for F2. That went ahead and updated the field reference here. Did not update the field local name, but that's fine. Easy fix. Okay, so we're leaving the upgrades invisible for now because there's nothing to do with that. So that's perfectly fine. Okay, we'll save all, and we'll publish. First publish of the day, might take a moment. Fantastic. I had this start to happen to me recently. I'm not entirely sure what's going on with that, but it seems to be if I simply just restart my Visual Studio Code, that goes away. If any of you have been experiencing that lately, I would love to know what you did to fix it. It's all good. Okay. Just making sure nothing was disabled there. Because initially, the AL wasn't there. Peculiar. Okay. Well, anyways, I do absolutely want to do this update. I just will do that off camera. No reason to make everyone wait for that. Alright. Yes, we're quite familiar with the fact that bot list just changed. We appreciate that. Alright. Let's try to hum along here. Okay, so now we've got purchasing, we've got an assignment codes available for us to set, and because of our table relationship that we know the purchasing should be related to vendor, we get the nice easy vendor lookup. Perfect. So there we go. We can connect that, and if we head over to our vendors, okay. So I also haven't addressed the payment method. So right now our player theoretically owes this vendor a significant amount of money. Yay. Oh, that's interesting. It's showing in dollars. Didn't we? I was quite sure we set this to euros. Wow. Did I find a curious bug, or did I somehow manage to set this? Nope, it's not set to US dollars here. If anyone knows why the fact box is showing dollars as the symbol when I've got my general ledger set up as euro, please let me know. I will dig into that at some point, but it's not a priority right now. Okay, so we've got now the vendor is editable, obviously, for everyone. And in permissions for players, we can control whether or not they can edit vendors. However, the permission system is fantastic for doing record set filtering. You can specify, for example, that a user is associated with a particular salesperson or purchaser code, and that salesperson purchaser code can only see and edit their vendors. However, the permission system built in does not give you the ability to set read-write permissions on a field level. If you want field level security, that is usually a third-party solution or a custom solution. And the way we're going to handle that is we're going to handle that via the player system and control of the editable section here. So we are going to want the player to only be able to modify the location code. Is our plan on this. So that is way down here in the receiving. So we can take all of these other groups, and if the person is a player type and not a sysadmin type, then we don't need to give them permission to edit that. So we're going to do that with some basic little page extension stuff. Nothing too crazy. Okay. So here in our player table, we've got this. My thinking is system administrator person might want to be able to play as well. So they should have the ability to have an entry for their username in the player table. So I'm inclined to say then we're going to create just a basic little option field on our table. I don't think it needs to be complex, but for extensibility it might be beneficial to be an option. We could go full enumerator, which is generally recommended if you want to be extensible to the maximum degree, but I'm more just thinking about if we in our source code decide to change things later, having something that is an option field is better than a boolean for let's call it system permissions. And we're going to make this system permissions. And this is going to be, of course, more system metadata, because everything is in our system. Sure. So for our members, we're going to keep this nice and simple, and this is going to be, by default, player. And for now, we'll just do player and admin. Okay. We might somewhere down the road have cause for like moderator or some other options like that, and that will let us change the code a little more easily without mucking with the data. So that's cool. Okay, let's see. So we'll make this a new setting up here in, I'm going to pop it right after name. Curious about what the snippet is, so let's try it. Huh. Okay. Wasn't quite what I expected, but I like it. I mean, just added brackets, parens, and application area. Sure, that works. Alright. System permissions. And there we go. Cool. Okay. Now, what we were going to do with this information is change some of the base product around. And we were going to do that. It really affects the player company. So I'm just thinking about where my folder structure makes sense for this. So I'm going to make a new folder here called core extensions. For when we're extending some of the core objects. And we are going to make a new page extension. Yeah, interesting. Okay, can't do a page extension Veloser. Alright, that's fine. Not a big deal. We'll do a new file. I like Waldo's snippets. Thank you, Waldo. So this is going to be BCS vendor list. Let's do card first because we care about editability. So we'll do vendor card. Once upon a time, with the nomenclature of how files were named, Waldo's extension, you had to put the object number after the vendor name because the page extension, the actual file name itself included the object numbers. That community strategy of naming files has revised and changed, so we don't need the object number after the line anymore. And as you can see, it just shows that it's a page extension what the name is. So I kind of like the old way better, but I get it. Alright, so in our case, we need to, in the layout, we're going to modify, first of all, the general group. And we are going to modify that it is editable based on is player. Let's go with isAdmin, something like that. We might not be able to do Boolean. We'll see. Rather a function. Procedure isAdmin. Let's see if that blows up. That's what I thought. Okay. In classic NAV, you could absolutely tie editability to an expression result, but I did not think that you could do that in pages, and that is the case. You can't do that. So what we need to do is instead have a global variable. We'll call this isAdmin. It should blow up nicely, saying that you can't name it as a method. And we'll set isAdmin. And now we can tie to that. And importantly, in our trigger for on open page, we need a little var that is our player record BCS player, and actually I started adding this variable to the trigger, and I don't want to do that. I just want the trigger to call set isAdmin, and it's in the procedure that we want. There we go. This probably is something we're going to move off to a single little code unit, because that seems like something we're going to use over and over again. I'm beginning to think a little bit about here, for example. Actually, yeah, we've got a player management code unit. This seems like a perfectly logical place to put that function, so let's move that already. We'll go ahead and take this out to I am going to make use of the banners handling that I mentioned earlier. Okay. Just because this page management code unit seems like the sort of place where we're going to start to have some pretty lengthy chunks of code, at least just geographically, so it seems like a good idea. Alright, let's see, my syntax highlighting has gone a little crazy, I think, but we'll work with it. Alright, so player set range on the user name, and user ID is the actual function we need, because that returns the user name, and that's how we hooked it up. So if we find first and we'll do a nice little combined. I was about to do if this exit true, and I realized how bananas that would be. We can just exit the result of this. It's a little clunky to read from a readability perspective, but it is really efficient to do it this way. We've neatly tied the if we don't find first, we exit false. There is no player record for this user ID, but if there is, then they have to be in this admin. If we later at some point have multiple system permissions that we want to return true for this for any reason, what we would do is, instead of doing a straight equals, we can do in and then a bracket to make it an array of possible settings. And I think even though it's not required now, I will do that here for maximum extensibility in the future. Like, we can just do comma player.systemPermissions ::, and whatever new option is. So there we go. And it makes no sense in the world to have that be local. So cool. All right, excellent. So now we want to have a var player management, one of the accepted abbreviations for code units. There we are. And now we can just do player management dot set as admin. Cool. And we left an hanging and just sitting around. So now when we open the page up, if there is no player entry or they're not set to an administrator, the general group will not be editable. That's cool. We have to do that also to the address and contact section, invoicing, and payments. Okay. Let's see. Nice enough here. When we started to type contact, it does let us know that that's a group. So cool. And we're going to copy and paste this on down. Thankfully, these days, with almost all the core pages, the groups are named things now. when 13 and 14 came out, a lot of these might be caption and then some random ID number, and you had to slowly figure out which groups were the ones you actually needed. That got very confusing. To do that, we had to go into the definition of the vendor card. So if you're working with an older version of BC, these groups might not have names. They may show up as like control 12 billion blah 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 blah. So just if you're working in a different version, that might be what's up, and you have to come in here and look at the groups like this to see what's actually involved. For example, I said group contact. That's not right. I actually want the address and contact group here, so I'm glad I looked. That would have been very confusing. Okay, so we have the other nice thing of the receiving group, which is where our location code is that we would want the player to edit. There are no hidden fields. Oh, I guess over receipt code is potentially a hidden field, but it's not in our case. So we can just cruise along, and because we can't say editable false to the group and then manually say this one is true, it doesn't layer like that. We now need to modify each of these individual fields in the group to say those are editable false. I admit I'm not 100% sure if, for example, all of these are something or other. This one's hard-coded to be editable false. If this was also tied to a variable and then we did a page extension to change it, I'm not sure which would win. I think the page extension would, but if someone else comes along and writes another extension, it could get a little confusing. Alright, so we want to do shipment method code, shipment agent code. I'm just double checking the names are all just the field names. Pretty much. Customize calendar, over receipt code. Yeah, alright, cool. Alright, and in times like this, it's a good idea just to layer our screen a little bit. So I'm going to do that. Again, on my screen, I would just be using secondary screen. So it'd be a little easier there, and probably for you as well. Modify lead time. Customize calendar is already editable false, so I guess I'll skip that for now. And we want to also modify the over receipt code. I look forward to playing with the over receipt handling. That's relatively new to this version, so I think it's a great idea. I think it's I'm glad to see it because it's resolving a long-standing issue. Okay, so vendor card, we're all set there. Let's publish this. I think everything is all saved, and now my development login that I'm currently using, because we just added that setting, I'm still currently a player, or if I even have a player record. I certainly am not set to administrator, so I should see when we open this up that I pretty much can't edit anything. Perfect. I can only edit location code. That's exactly what we want to see. Now, just to confirm that we're all in good shape, we'll go to our player list, and I'm going to create a new one for me. We have that issue still. Before we go too far, let's fix that bug, because I want it to be fixed. Auto increment true. Okay, it already is fixed. Good. We had earlier episode of this noticed that I had put in auto increment equals false. Totally brilliant. Stream dev account. Interesting. We have auto increment. Oh. I know what's up. Auto increment was false. We created a 0, and the auto increment ticks over effectively after the insert in a way. So because this is already 0, it's getting the record already exists error before it assigns it a number. Yeah. Here's the small challenge. I have to publish a change to shut off auto increment, bump that up to 1, and then republish. So let's fix that. We could also simply delete the player entry, but I don't want to. Yep, refreshing while it's there. We might maybe have gotten an issue. No, it's probably just applying the changes. Okay, that's the case. The stream chat is very quiet today. I admit I like having you guys hanging out and watching stuff real time and chiming in, even if it's to sass. But not today. A little quiet. That's okay. We all have busy days. Alright. Applying the changes. Now we go to our player list, edit, create a new one, and now we correctly get the 2. So yeah, if you forget auto increment and you see that 0 show up, you have to fix that before you turn on the auto increment. Okay, stream dev admin account. And we are going to make that an admin. And we do need to tie this to at least a username, which is just dev. So now we should be able to go to our vendors, edit this, and we should see a nicely editable record. We do not. Cool. I like it when things work well. Brilliant. Alright, so where did we go awry? Okay, so we have the dev admin account. We're set to admin. Username is dev. Username dev. Okay. So, what be the issue? We want based on username or user ID. And then we do a find first to see if we find anything, and if they're an admin. I don't know which one is failing, and unfortunately, while this is really compact, it's also really difficult to troubleshoot. So what we'll do is we will flag that as debug, and we'll start debugging, and at the very least we can check the filter on the player table to see if the filter makes sense. And now we should get a debug, and now here on our local we can look at the filter and we can see it is filtering on username is dev. And if we step into, we do see that it comes back and it gets the record. So the find first worked, it gets the dev admin account, and we get the system permission of admin. Okay, that's cool. Oh, all right. Yep. Well, that's good stuff. I see what our issue is. Maybe you do too. I'll give you half a second here. Yeah. Say okay to that. We can close this instance of that. No problem. I know exactly what's up, and if you think about it, you do too. We call this function to set is admin and return a boolean. What do we do with that return value? Not a thing. That helps. Downside of refactoring: to move a function out when you're thinking about it and chattering along about what you're doing, you forget to do anything with the result. Watching hilarious videos earlier today about some of the quirks of JavaScript, and I remain very thankful sometimes that we work in a strongly typed language. Whew, I'll tell you. Okay, so now in our vendor list, we should have much better results now when we take a look at our vendor card. We should nice and happily have a very editable record this time because we are set to admin. And this gives a system administrator of this game the ability to fix a misbehaving record. Now that does assume that this eventually opens at some point. I wonder what was going on there. It opened, but I clicked too many times apparently. Okay. I'm a little baffled. Something is chugging. Okay. Well, when things are chugging, first of all, refresh. And there we are. Okay. So, force refresh, get everything all nice and tidy after our publish. And let's go to our vendor list. Manage. Edit. Alright, good. And now, because we have things hooked up correctly, as an administrator, our vendor card looks perfectly normal. Everything is all as it would normally be. All the editables are the defaults as they are. So that's cool. Okay, great. Look at the ledger entries on this. I'm just curious. Yep, there's all of our invoices. Yeah, that's what I thought. Currency code is blank across the board. So I'm still just baffled and bothered. I'm guessing that the display of those vendor statistics has to be coming from my regional settings. So if I swap this over to Sweden, I mean, that doesn't make sense. I've got my system set to euros. It shouldn't show me. I don't know what that was just suggesting. Sure. it's still just showing dollars. That's bizarre. And incorrect. Okay, well, I'm not going to try to solve that right this second. Okay, so now, as we've talked about, the vendor has the ability to be controlled location-wise. We have on the purchasing bot which vendor it's associated with, and now we need a new handling system that will allow us to know which vendors will work with which items. And we also need some additional settings on the vendor card, and related to that, the list, some additional settings about the maximum settings here for the orders per day and quantity per order. Now the orders per day, that definitely should live at the vendor level. I was just trying to decide with the maximum quantity per order if that should be per item. Because programmatically that would be easier, but then the player could theoretically order 6 different raw materials and hit an interesting, more resulting maximum. Alright, let's put it up at the vendor level and we'll see what we need to do with that from there. Okay, so real quick, we are going to create a new table extension to extends the vendor table. So let's give our vendor some controls here. We're going to do field. Okay, part of this live stream for me is experimenting with learning all the snippets from this extension pack, so I'm just kind of digging the idea of looking at some of these different options here. What's in here? I admit I don't know always. Okay, so if I look at my snippets, okay, so yeah, we've got field code, and field options. So if I say just field, what do I get? It's not bad. Alright, and so we'll do max orders per day. This is going to be a type of integer. Sounds okay. That's an interesting template thing. For one, it automatically hooked into the caption field, and then gives you the structure to put comments on it to clarify what that caption is about. So that's not a bad little snippet template. I kind of dig it. I don't use the caption comments at this time, but as we saw in PoEdit, that sort of thing would flow through to PoEdit, so here I could provide more info to whoever's doing the translation what this is all about. So just for clarity's sake, I'll put a period because it's short for maximum there. I don't need it on the field itself. And then we'll also do the same for maximum quantity per day. Sure. And I'll keep it integer on that as well. That seems fine in this case. Okay, so we should, I'm thinking in our vendor list, realistically, for the most part, people who are going to be playing this game don't actually need the responsibility center phone number contact info, for example. They also aren't going to need the balance, payment due, and payments because there shouldn't be, once we got this working correctly, the balance there. So we're going to probably tidy this layout up to have just the fields that we're adding, which will make this list fit nice, and then we're going to create a new fact box looking like tomorrow to show which materials this vendor is selling us for which price. On the vendor card, I'm inclined to say that since the player isn't going to be able to work with a lot of this information, but they will set a location code, we can backtrack a little and say, you know what, we're going to set this whole receiving section to be non-editable, and we're going to create a new section here called player controls to show the information that they need from a game perspective, and also to have an editable version of location code. So let's tidy this up here. We don't need all of these. We're going to instead modify the receiving section to be entirely non-editable. And I want to copy, not paste. Trying to go quick now because I would like to finish some of these odds and ends. Okay, so we've modified pretty much the whole layout to be non-editable. So now we need to add after the general section. We're going to create a whole new section, which will be a group called player. Let's call it player info. And we'll give it a caption of player information and settings. And that'll be nice and clear here. And then we will have the editable location code, where we're adding the location code a second time. And I had to give this a different field name as a field entry because there already is a location code on the page, and it's good to clarify why there's a second version of it. So yeah, we'll let that default as caption and everything from the table. That's just fine, but we want this to be it should come in editable true by default, so we'll leave that pretty much as is. I think we only need application area. Yeah. Excellent. And then we're going to have some non-editable information. We're going to do max orders per day, which will be max orders per day, and we'll set cool, and we'll set max quantity per day. Excellent. Okay, so that way they've got a little more to work with, and real speedy like, we're going to create a new page extension again for the list. Cool. Alright, for now we don't need any actions. We're just going to be doing a lot of hiding of things, and for visibility's sake, let's do this. We know that it's a few of these columns here, so we'll modify the responsibility center. Visible equals false. Now, if we wanted to be super efficient about things, and we had a lot more than like 5 or 6 fields to hide, you could go ahead and, with the designer, hide all of these fields, and then just download the code and copy and paste it. So there is sometimes the benefit of designer as a tool can speed up your development efforts. And you don't have to do all of the little tweaks to this. Okay. I'm gonna we'll take there's no reason for them to have the balance. It's really bugging me that the LCY is showing up wrong. It's the wrong symbol. Okay. And finally, last but not least, payments. Cool. Alright, and now finally we can do add after name. We're going to do a field which will be The location code's already on there, so we don't need to do location code. Forget that. Field max orders per day. Great. And field max quantity per day. Super duper. And oops, triple clicked my cursors. That's a neat one. Oh, I see. It's being cheeky and giving me tabs in a couple places. Okay. The line you're on detects that it should indent, but the line you're not on does not. Alright. Anyways. Cool. There's that. Yes, yes, yes. That's how we know it's working. Errors. Too impatient. That means that we loaded it up while the roll center was still being compiled, because we got the wrong roll center. Great. And now we have nice and simple vendor number, name, max orders per day, quantity per day, and location. So that's cool. And we're going to need a fact box over here. Then this will fit very nicely in this list, even on a scrunch up screen like I'm currently using. Excellent. So right now we can't code against this because it's going to be a 0. And we have the max order per day and max quantity per day editable false, even if we're an admin. So that's incorrect. We want to be able to do that. So there we go. Okay. Well, we'll push that in a moment because we know it's there. But now we can come back to our bots, our dispatch bots, our purchase bots, and we can fix up some of our hard coding. So what we're going to do now is, for the last few minutes of our stream today, is remove some of the hard coding as much as we can. We're not quite there on all of it, but we can do it for some of it. So we are going to start off with purchasing bots now need an assignment on if they're assigned to a vendor, they need to do things. So but we had talked about if the purchasing bot is assigned do the purchase order creation, and else they will farm for new suppliers. Okay, so that's cool. If rec.assignment code does not equal blank, then we will add to our document chain, and we will add, instead of hard coding this vendor number, we will pass it the assignment code. Nice and easy. And else we will the nice thing about having error catching is we can throw errors and it won't break anything. So now our bots, if they're assigned to something, will try to create documents, and otherwise they will farm for suppliers. Then we have additional code down here that reacts on them being assigned. So I'm moving this. I was going to say I'll move it in here, but this is inside of a loop, so we wouldn't want this code to run multiple times. So we're just going to have to accept that down here we will also do a code chunk. Now we could set a Boolean variable at the function level to say whether or not we're actively farming or not, but there's no advantage to have a Boolean check versus a comparative check like this. There's no performance difference, so it's fine. It's no big deal. Okay, so great. Now we're creating a PO. We do that at the header level. We're going to need to, in here, put some functionality that checks if we've hit our maximum orders per day for that supplier. So that's a little interesting. And we're also going to have to add some checks down here in the quantity level and change the item logic around. So I think what I would like to do before we go too much further, for those of you who didn't join the stream early on, we had 400 purchase orders from earlier, and I don't want to have to do a batch post on those again. So let's add some logic in here that after we get the purchase order created, we, as part of this run, will post those. And I was going to leave it up here, but I kind of want to do that as a follow-up to do. So let's leave this logic in place here. We're creating all the purchase orders inside of the operation per day loop. That's fine. And then I think what I'll do is down here, we will, first of all, at this stage, we will commit. So all of those open purchase orders, if something goes wrong in this next part, the purchase orders will be open for us to troubleshoot as system admins, and we can see the errors, troubleshoot them, that sort of thing. So this gives us a fallback in case something goes wrong. Then we'll do another for each doc number in documents, because now we have the purchase order number. We will post PO, and that's going to be a new function that we are going to create, because I'm not going to call batch post, as tempting as that is, because what I will do is after each post I will commit, and that way we always have only the ones that are causing troubles being the most recent ones. So now we need a little routine down here. Post PO, and I, like I said, am going to use banners a lot in code units where there's going to be lots of code. I think the visibility in the view here is very helpful, especially on higher res screens. It's a nice way to jump to chunks. So now we will do a local procedure post PO, and we will take a purchase order number, which will be our code 20, and I'm not going to bother returning a boolean. If it errors out, we have error handling, and that's fine. So I believe there's a code unit for, let's just call it purge post, and this should, as far as I know, have the ability to take okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. It takes a purchase header. Okay, cool. So real simple, we need a purchase header. And the reason I'm up here, I'm getting back a PO number from the create function, throwing that in my list, so I have a nice list of all the codes. Somewhere that functionality has to be turned back into a purchase header. There's no value to having the purchase header up here, so it's okay to just pass in that code to the post function, and we'll just do the get on it. If purchase header dot get, I wish the autocomplete would prioritize the exact match first, but what can we do? And in this case, we do document type. it's always going to be order, so we're hard coding that type because we know it's always going to be a purchase order for this code unit. And now we can just do the purchase order number, then cool, purchase order header. All right, there we go. I'm not entirely sure why, when I just saved that just now, this all indented. That was a little weird. Okay. Yeah, so theoretically now, our bot, when we publish this, our bot should take along posting everything. And after each post, it'll commit that as well. So that's cool. All right, I dig that. Yep, okay. That will give us the nice, easy ability that, yeah, just thinking about when we get into some of the higher bot tiers, if they have, let's say it's something crazy, they've managed to get the highest tier and they've upgraded it and it's 10 operations per day, and the vendor they've assigned it to has a maximum orders per day, and they've we're going to have to look at the number of open and posted documents for this day. So in our to-do, here at the beginning of this create call, we have to do a count of both the open PO docs, because we might have created 3 of the 10 available and whatever have you, and the posted docs. Okay, so to see if are they allowed to have any more transactions for that day. All right. Cool. Excellent. Well, I mean, let's tick over the game day after we publish this and see that the posting is happening automatically, because that would be a nice little ending to this if we have our bot posting things automatically. I hadn't fixed it up yet in here, but probably should. I'm going to create a new payment method on this vendor. Auto pay. And this will go directly whenever we pay. It should come out of cash. There we go. Yeah. I believe that's all we need to do on this one. Oh, yeah. I've changed things. I've published a change. Alright, so now we should be able to still have that. Great. There we go. And the max orders per day, we'll put this in for now, that this one is 2, and the maximum quantity per day is on. Let's start with 100, and we'll fiddle with that more tomorrow. So now let's go to our game setup, and we're going to tick this up. Okay, so now if we go to let's go to items, be able to see it in a few different places. Okay, and just because I've already spaced on it, and end of day, what can you do? Brains get tired. Okay, so March 29th in 2024. So what we should be able to see is in short order for this item, we should see some purchases go through for that date. Let's go check on our job queue though, because I think it might have. No error. That's cool. What pop-up is this? Oh, interesting. I managed to get this stuck on my screen. Cool. All right. Let's see. Bot activity. Wait. Yeah, scrolling down would take a long time. Let's not do that. Descending. Okay, so here on 328, that has already ticked over on the research side, but something has gone wrong on the purchase side because we should have seen some generation of things. So this is where our error catching comes in real handy. Aha. So, in the process of calling that post code unit, we are not passing along what exactly are we posting. So this is a nice example of why we needed that error catching. We're going to make heavy use of that throughout the series, I'm sure. So how do we do that? Well, then we need to, nothing crazy. I believe it's as simple as set posting flags. Yeah. Okay, so that takes this takes a record, and the reason for that is because on the record we have a set of booleans to say what is actually going to happen when we run this over to the posting code unit. They're not shown to the user, but when you hit the post button and you choose from the menu, these boolean flags on the header get set accordingly. So if you're just receiving true, false, etc. But we need to separately call, I believe, the set posting flags with that record. We might be able to skip this line. I'm not going to try it because I would like to finish today's episode and I would like to see it posting, and I don't want to gamble on whether or not that will work. So, okay, with all good there. Alright, now let's tick up our game day. I like that we can just do this, and within a minute we will have results. Okay, so that's good. And now we go to our bot activity log. We see that the purchasing bot did not run for that day, which is correct. But what I want to see is on 329, which should go through within a minute or so, we should have 3 research bot entries and a purchasing bot entry. Make sure our job queue is doing everything it should. That's really weird that my autocomplete in the browser is starting to pay attention to what I'm searching on. I'm not sure I approve. Okay. Yep, should be ticking over right now. And we'll double check the error log while we're at it just to see there's nothing new on that date. Great. Okay, I'm going to be too impatient for this, so let's get over to our job queue entry. Oh, it's in process now. Okay. Downside of impatience. Because the job queue is posting, it's going to take a little longer, and there we go. On 329, our purchasing bot ticked over and created some purchase orders. And if we go look at the posted purchase invoices, we should see on March 29th a posted purchase invoice. So let's filter on that. And you know, I'm going to be lazy and instead sort descending here. Now the downside to our giant numbers that we probably will need to have just based on transactional volume is that all of the columns are always going to be not quite wide enough. Okay, so yep, 329. There we go. So our bot is now posting and it is controlled by player settings. So that's pretty decent progress. So our next things up tomorrow are going to be that we are going to real quick create a subsidiary table for the vendor to control which materials the vendor is going to sell and at what price point. Starting to talk that through, and we could manage this a lot simpler. We don't even really have to have a separate table for this. We can very simply hook onto one of the existing things here. We have the ability on this vendor to set prices, and I still am getting used to exactly where all of the options are. Okay. Now I feel like I'm going nuts. I know that this vendor has the ability to have... there we go. Jeez. Navigate purchase prices. Real simple. We can manage this real easy by having the item number and the direct unit cost in this table. If that material good is something the vendor will purchase, it will be in this table. That's we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Great. Okay, so we'll probably need to make just a simple fact box to show this info to the user at the vendor list level for clarity's sake. And then we will have our purchasing bots that are not assigned to a vendor populate this table when they generate new vendors, and we can do some settings tomorrow on pulling this purchase price table into our extension. I'm going to have to learn a little bit about this part of the system myself, because I know it got heavily refactored not too long ago, in a good way. But table structure still pretty much looks the same as it has been. So that's okay. I'm not going to do anything crazy. We talked about doing market prices going up and down. I am not going to keep those historical prices in this table. I think that would get too huge too quickly. We're going to have central market prices. So that way it's something we can store data per company false and not have to flood the system with market trends. We will still have a ledger of like what the prices are over time, so that way we can have some fun with the AI analysis of the price and value and whatnot, but we don't need that data per company. I want to have some sort of sense from the player side that if everyone's using fabric-based goods, that fabric should become more and more and more expensive. I think that would be a more interesting dynamic, because then it can encourage people to diversify. So yeah, tomorrow we'll work on generating vendors with our purchasing bots, and then we'll tie together finally the last step, which is controlling which items get purchased, and we'll also lock down the item card in a similar sort of way where players can only really control their target inventory levels that they want to maintain. Yeah, that sounds like a really good plan for tomorrow. Excellent. So thanks for sticking around, everyone. We now we have a nice, simple, and smooth system for our vendor here, and we are finally seeing some posted entries automatically coming from that. So that's all sorts of excellent. I think we're in great shape to end the week later this week with possibly a similar thing going on in the sales side of things. You'll notice here that by having created that new payment method code in just the time I've been babbling, here we had another day's worth of invoicing. That payment method code of automatic auto creates payments so that the vendor doesn't generate balance. So now we should be able to see on our chart of accounts that the cash is going down as things are being bought. So we should see a pretty significantly negative cash. We will be, of course, adding some infrastructure in the not too distant future to watch for negative cash and prevent whatever transaction from posting. You should not be able to go negative in the game sense. So, okay, well, thanks everyone, and I look forward to seeing folks tomorrow. And I think that's it for today. Take care, everybody.